Today on the last episodes of Lions Lineup for the semester, we'll be talking about the NFL bracketology. Stay with us. Hello and welcome back. I'm Brandon McGowan, joined here by Harrison Durr and Joe Vasile. Today on the Lions Lineup, we're going to be talking about the NFL bracketology. First, we're going to start with the NFC. We're going to start with the seeding. Harrison, what's your 1 through 6?
For number 1, I got to go with the Seattle Seahawks. I mean, I think the entire NFL world is going with the Seattle Seahawks. I mean, they're 8-0 in the conference, haven't lost at home in 2 years. They've proven that, it's their race to lose. So I have them at number 1.
Very much so.
Yeah. Number 2, this might be a bit of a surprise here, but I actually have the Carolina Panthers. I believe they have 2 more games against the New Orleans Saints, who are currently the number 2 seed. I believe that their defense is strong enough to take care of Drew Brees and the Saints offense. I believe, this win streak, it's one of the best of their franchise history. I don't see it anytime soon, and I believe that the Panthers can actually lock up the number 2 seed. For number 3, I have the Philadelphia Eagles.
I like that one.
Yeah, of course you're an Eagles fan. But the key to that is they have to beat the Lions this weekend. If they don't beat the Lions, then not only do they lose seeding, but they could very much lose a chance at the playoffs. But if they beat the Lions, then they have the tiebreaker against Detroit. And then the last game of the season against Dallas, I definitely see them taking care of it. Because the last 2 years, as we know, Dallas has had win or go home at stake, and both times they've lost. First the Giants, then to the Redskins, so only fitting the Eagles are left, so they'll complete the cycle there. So I definitely see the Eagles in number 3. Going to number 4, Detroit Lions. I know the Bears and Packers are still technically, mathematically in it, but I think it's too little too late for them.
Yeah, I think it's Detroit's division to lose. So
Absolutely. Aaron Rodgers, Jay Cutler, they've missed too much time, and the Detroit Lions really should thank the Minnesota Vikings because they've helped them out more than they could ask for. Obviously, the tie against Green Bay and then beating Chicago in overtime. So as long as Detroit, continues with what they've been doing, I think they have no problem. So they'll get the number 4 seed.
All right.
Looking at the wild cards now, number 5, New Orleans Saints. Like I said earlier, I think that the Panthers will overtake the Saints, giving them the 5th seed, and they have the tiebreaker over the 49ers, who I think will be the 6th seed, so that'll come into play big time. And then, obviously, the 6th seed, the San Francisco 49ers. I know Arizona is trying to pull into the playoff picture there, but after losing to Philadelphia at home, that's not good. So, so that's my NFC seeding right there.
All right, Joe, go to you.
Well, I agree with most things for what you said. I've got the Seahawks at number 1. I've got a little bit different, though, from there on out. At number 2, I've got the New Orleans Saints still being there. The Carolina Panthers, don't get me wrong, are a good team. Cam Newton's a good quarterback, but the Saints are just on a completely different level. It's not quite the Panthers' time yet. I've got them getting into the playoffs at the 5 seed, so pretty much just switching the 2 of them. I think the Saints will win the South. The Panthers will be the 5 seed. And then I've also got the 3 and 4 seeds switching. I've got the Detroit Lions in at the number 3 seed. I think that they're a very complete team. They're actually pretty underrated in a division that's not so great this year. They're head and shoulders above them, and I've got the Dallas Cowboys winning the NFC East. And as much as before the season I came in and said that the Cowboys were going to finish 3rd, they've proven otherwise this year. They've proven that they're for real, that they are a playoff team. They're not a great team, but they're certainly not willing, but deserving of getting into the playoffs. And then I also agree with you on the 6th seed in the San Francisco 49ers. That's going to be a dangerous team if they get into the playoffs. They're getting Crabtree back, and we'll see how Kaepernick can play. He's been kind of up and down this year. But if he can get hot, you should be watching out for the 49ers.
The Cowboys, though, do you think they can win that big game finally?
Yeah.
You think so?
I think so.
All right.
All right. So we'll stick with you, Joe. What for your NFC wildcard games, who do you have winning?
So I guess the matchups would be I would have the Dallas Cowboys. The Dallas Cowboys playing the Carolina Panthers, and my 3 seed was was not New Orleans. It would be
The Lions.
The Lions. Thank you. The Lions against San Francisco. Like I said, I think San Francisco could be a dangerous team in the playoffs if Kaepernick can get hot, especially now that Crabtree's back. Also with Vernon Davis, Frank Gore running the way he has all season long. I think San Francisco can beat Detroit in the first round of the playoffs. And for the other game, I see the New Orleans Saints. Not the Saints moving on. I see the Carolina Panthers actually moving on and defeating the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah, I can see that. I agree with you there. Harrison, what about you?
My wild card round's a little different since we had different seedings, obviously. So for me, I have the number 6 49ers over the number 3 Eagles. I believe the 49ers, the experience they had in the playoffs last year, will really carry them over in that wild card game. And also the Eagles at home, we know they had that 10-game losing streak at home. That's obviously going to be in the back of their minds.
Yeah.
I'm sure you obviously know about that.
Oh, yeah, it was a painful 10 games.
But yeah, I see this, the 49ers moving on. Then looking at the other wild card matchup, I actually have the Saints being the Lions. If you guys remember 2 years ago, that was actually a playoff matchup, but in New Orleans. But again, I still think Matt Stafford, the Lions are definitely, they're a great team, but the Saints playoff experience with Drew Brees and everyone they have and the reamped defense, I really see them going past Detroit.
Yeah, so again, not the Detroit Lions year for you.
Not the Detroit Lions year.
All right, well then I'll stick with you. We're at the divisional round.
Divisional round, first off, I usually think that's the best round in the NFL playoffs. You usually get the best matchups there and the most exciting matchups. So for starters, we'll take a look at the divisional matchup again. For the third time, the number 2 Panthers will beat the number 5 Saints. I really think the Panthers could have the Saints game this year. I think they're a complete team. They really caught my eye this year, and I think the Saints will be wondering after the season, how can we beat the Carolina Panthers?
Well, they have that super long win streak, so they're on fire right now. The momentum's in their favor, and after the Saints, losing this week to the Seattle, that's right. Thank you. I just don't think the Saints have what it takes to beat Carolina, at least for this next week. Who knows, down the stretch.
Plus the Saints, I personally think they're a bit overrated. They lost to the Jets, which I think was, I was very surprised with that. And even the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they only beat them by about 2 or 3 points.
Yeah.
So I don't think the Saints are as a complete team as people say they are. And then the other matchup, the number 1 Seahawks over the number 6 49ers. Again, the Seahawks haven't lost at home in 2 years. They got that playoff experience on the road last year in Washington and Atlanta. So I think that's huge for them going through this year's playoffs. And I don't see them losing at home anytime soon.
They're going to be very tough to beat. Joe,
Absolutely.
How about you? Divisional round?
Well, I agree with the outcome of the Seahawks 49ers game. I think that's going to be a game that, especially at home, the 49ers are not going to be able to beat the Seahawks without some kind of a miracle happening, quite frankly. And as far as the other game, which for me was the Saints against the Carolina Panthers, also. I've actually got the Saints winning just because it kind of, in my version, Saints are at home, and going into the Metrodome, not the Metrodome, the Superdome.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's another very tough environment to play, especially in the playoffs. That place is going to be loud. And while I do like the Panthers, I don't see them being able to get past them in the playoffs.
All right. And for the last one, the NFC Championship game, who do you have going to the Super Bowl?
Seattle Seahawks.
All right. Yeah,
Nice and easy.
I'm sure that's going to be your pick too.
Yeah. Only difference is I have it against the Panthers, but in the end, the Seattle Seahawks, they're your NFC Championship champion.
Right. Well, there you have it. That's the NFC. After the break, when we talk about the AFC, stay with us. Welcome back to the lineup. Now we're going to talk about the AFC. Start with Joe. Your seeding, 1 through 6. Who do you have?
It's actually quite simple. I got the Denver Broncos at number 1. I think they've proven, not only in taking down the Kansas City Chiefs now twice over the past 3 weeks, they are the best team despite some of their faults and some of their shortcomings. There really is not a team out there that really can scare the Denver Broncos. And plus also playing in Denver, a mile high, it's a rough place to go into. Just because that's one of those things that doesn't get talked about a lot. Going up to that kind of elevation for a visiting team is very hard to do because not only do you have to prepare to play the Broncos, but you have to prepare to play in that altitude, and that's a very hard thing to do. My number 2 seed is the New England Patriots. They're another team that's looked vulnerable at times this year. I think the loss to the Jets in the last minute, and a couple other losses that have happened right at the last minute. But I still have them as the number 2 seed, just because there's no other team really in the AFC that I see that's, head and shoulders going to pass them in terms of record by the end of the season. The 3 seed is actually the only team that could probably give them a run for the money, and I have the Indianapolis Colts going there. Once again, it's running thread with all these teams. They've had times where they've looked vulnerable and they've taken some bad losses, but they're still a very good team and arguably the best team in a very weak AFC South. You thought maybe the Texans could do it. They've fallen flat on their face this year with all their issues.
They're also a very good second half team too.
Exactly.
They don't have a good first half, but they don't let that bother them. They come back out and they just find ways to win.
And Andrew Luck at quarterback is poised well beyond his years, only in his second season. It's barely any drop-off between him and Peyton Manning, at least in terms of, the Colts' overall record from season to season. At 4, I've got the Cincinnati Bengals coming out of a very weak AFC North. You might have looked at it before the season and said maybe the Ravens, maybe the Steelers. Like you said, once again, those 2 teams have kind of not been that great. The Ravens have showed some signs of life the past few weeks and are trying to make a run for a wild card. I got them coming up a little bit short, though. 5, I've got the Kansas City Chiefs. They're still 9-3 at this point. Still a very good team. They're not, unbeatable like they seemed a few weeks ago. Now that they've started to play some tougher competition, but they're still a very good team. They're still a playoff team. They're not going to fall off the face of the earth. I got them at the 5 seed in the first wild card. In the second wild card, I've got of all teams the Miami Dolphins. And despite all of their troubles that they've had the past few weeks between Richie Incognito and Jonathan Martin and all of the other things, they've been a really good team. Surprisingly so. And there's really not, a 6th quote-unquote good team in the AFC
that you look at is wide open.
That you look at and see, okay, these guys are going to do it. And if you look at the records, it's really could come down between Miami and Baltimore. And now both of those teams have to play the New England Patriots. But the difference is the other 2 games for Miami are the Buffalo Bills and the New York Jets. And I believe the Baltimore Ravens have to play the Detroit Lions and the Cincinnati Bengals.
Both on the road.
Exactly, both on the road. And so the combination of all of that definitely plays in the Dolphins' favor. And if they can take care of business, they could lock up the 6th seed in the East.
All right. Harrison?
I have the exact same seating as him, actually.
Well, there you go.
Yeah. But important thing to note is the Colts and Bengals are playing each other this week. So I think I do have the Colts winning that matchup, but if the Bengals do find a way to beat the Colts, I think the Bengals and Colts will switch seeds there.
Yeah. All right. Well, then we'll start with the AFC playoff matchup. Harrison, what's your wild card?
Wild card, I have the number 3 Colts over the number 6 Dolphins. As Joe said before, there's no really clear-cut good number 6 team. And I think the Colts are a very complete team. They've won a lot of tough games this year. They won at San Francisco. They beat the Seattle Seahawks, the only team to beat the Seattle Seahawks. And obviously they beat the Denver Broncos. That was one of the best games of the year in my personal opinion. And then the other wild card matchup, I have the number 4 Bengals over the number 5 Chiefs. I know a lot of people believe the Chiefs can go far in the playoffs this year, but before they played Denver, they really had an easy schedule, and their weaknesses are really coming out now. They even lost to the San Diego Chargers, which I think surprised a lot of people. Obviously they're an improved team from their 2-14 season last year, without any doubt, but I just don't see them getting past the wild card round due to their lack of experience and just because I do believe they're overrated.
Well, that would be a disappointing end for such a good team if the Chiefs lost first round. But Joe, how about you?
Well, I agree with them that the Colts are probably going to beat the Dolphins. The Colts are obviously a much better team than the Dolphins. We're not even at 500 right now, and yet we're talking about them possibly making the playoffs as a wild card of all things. But for the second game, I'm in a little bit of disagreement. I think the Kansas City Chiefs match up very well against the Cincinnati Bengals, just because the Bengals offense, it relies very heavily on a lot of vertical passing with A.J. Green and even Marvin Jones a little bit the last few weeks. Sure, Giovanni Bernard has been very good, but they're still very much a passing team. The Kansas City Chiefs have one of the top passing defenses in the league, and so they've got guys that they can match up and slow down A.J. Green with. And so I think that matchup kind of plays in their hands, and if they can execute on defense, I can see the Chiefs upsetting the Bengals.
The only difference for the Bengals this year is the last 2 years they've been playing the Houston Texans on the road. Both years they've lost, so I'm sure they're just glad to get a new opponent in the playoffs at this point.
I'm sure they'd gladly take the Texans this year.
I'm sure anybody would.
Yeah.
Well, I'll stick with you, Joe, for the divisional. Who do you have winning and going on to the championship?
Well, I've got the Denver Broncos beating the Kansas City Chiefs for the third time this year. I think we've seen their two previous matchups that the Broncos are they're in another class with the Chiefs. It's unfortunate because, like I said, the Chiefs are a good year. They've had a nice, surprising year coming off that 2-14 season last year. They finally have a quarterback, but I just don't think that they're ready to seriously contend. And it is tough to beat a team 3 times in a year.
Yeah.
But I think if any team's going to be able to do it, it's the Denver Broncos. And as for the second game, which I had as the Patriots against the Colts, that's a tough one.
That is.
It's very hard to call, and it's very hard to bet against Tom Brady in the playoffs. But I'm picking the Colts.
Oh, all right. That's a surprise matchup there. Personally, I think if it comes down to them, I think Tom Brady wins that one. But Harrison, how about you?
I have the Colts over the Patriots too, actually, if you can believe it. I really believe.
Because I'm the odd man out?
I guess so, yeah. The New England Patriots last year, they proved they can lose at home in the playoffs with obviously the Baltimore Ravens beating them to get the AFC title. And I just think the Colts are a more complete team than the Patriots. And as I stated before, the Colts have proven they can win the big game against a tough opponent. And I do think the Patriots have shown signs of weaknesses this year. Especially in the first half lately. It seems every game they can't seem to get it going in the first half.
Yeah.
So I think that the Colts it's gonna be a great game. You know, it might come down to one possession, one score. It might even go to overtime.
Yeah.
But I do believe the Colts will beat the Patriots. And then like Joe, I have the Broncos over just the Bengals instead of the Chiefs. That's the only difference there. Broncos are on a whole new level. Going back to Joe's point that playing at Mile High, it's
going to be a tough matchup.
Definitely.
So, real quick, who do you have playing the Seahawks in the Super Bowl?
I have the Broncos beating the Colts, another classic matchup, Payne against his old team, although this time he gets revenge.
This time he comes back on top?
I think the fact that the Broncos will be home this time rather than being in Indianapolis will definitely make
a big factor there.
That'll get him over the hump, I think.
All right, Joe, how about you?
I agree. Broncos over Colts pretty much for the exact same reasons. Second time playing them, and this time they're at home instead of on the road.
All right, and for the Super Bowl, you both have the same matchup. Who do you have coming out on top?
It's hard to go against them because they were my preseason pick to win the Super Bowl, so I'm going to stick with the Denver Broncos over the Seattle Seahawks. I think it being in a kind of a neutral place, being outside at MetLife Stadium, who knows what the weather's going to be like, that plays much more into the hands of the Denver Broncos, who play in Colorado, as opposed to, the Seahawks playing in Seattle.
Right.
I think they're better equipped to handle bad weather, so I'm going with the Broncos.
All right.
And I'm going with the Seahawks, actually. I do believe, I said the last time we had our quarter mark show on the NFL, I still believe they're the most complete team in the NFL. And the playoff experience they had last year, I think, is really what's going to carry them over in the end.
All right. Well, thank you, guys. All right, and thank you all for watching the last show this semester. We'll see you next semester. For Brandon McGowan, Harrison Durr, and for the last time, Joe Vasile. Thanks for watching.